with very strong women around me that rode motorcycles.
When I get on a motorcycle and I get out there, everything sort of melts away. Anything that is a stress, anything that feels like it's been a weight on my shoulders is gone. It's just this sense of freedom. I don't want to stop. I just want to be out there for hours and hours and hours and hours. I could go around in circles and be happy.
I have been a woman in a man's world my entire life. I was on ski patrol, I do martial arts. I've excelled at motorcycle riding. I went climbing with all men on Mount Everest. Most all of the things I do, I'm surrounded by just men, and I've enjoyed that. I love the fact that when I'm riding a Harley, I can go to Sturgis by myself and I can hang with 50 of the coolest guys, and they think of me as one of the guys.
My brother and I, our birthdays are really close together, and I wanted a horse really bad. And instead of a horse, they came home with two 50cc dirt bikes. I was pissed. I was like, where's my horse? I'm serious, where's my horse? But then I got on it. I loved the feel of it.
So I took the motorcycle safety class, and I had no intention of buying a motorcycle. And about 3 weeks after I took the class, a friend of mine said, do you want to go test ride some motorcycles? And he didn't even have a license. So I said, okay. So I test rode a motorcycle, and I was like, now I got to buy one.
I didn't get my official first motorcycle until 14 years ago. I feel very complete when I'm riding. I've had many, many bikes in my years. I own 6 different kinds of bikes. I like to go on-road and off-road. So when the pavement ends, I keep going.
I fall asleep thinking about motorcycles. I wake up thinking about motorcycles. People are trying to have a conversation with me and I'm thinking about motorcycles. And I think I might be addicted.
Since the 1870s, women have been driven to ride. Two-wheeled vehicles gave women the first real taste, the wild thrill found in unfettered mobility. Victorian Age corsets and billowing skirts were set aside as riding unleashed the power hidden within and the freedom to give that power pursuit. As women's rights advocate Susan B. Anthony proclaimed,
"Let me tell you what I think of bicycling. I think it has done more to emancipate women than anything else in the world. It gives women a feeling of freedom and self-reliance. I stand and rejoice every time I see a woman ride by on a wheel. The picture of free, untrammeled womanhood."
With the invention of the motorized bicycle, women roared into the 20th century, blazing new paths across the countryside in an avid search for the adventure that is the open road. Women continue to shape and push the boundaries of two-wheeled freedom. The call of the road stirs in their blood, a call they answer down 1,000 interstates and blacktops and dusty country roads, highways and byways that sail past in the raw sweep of wide-open spaces. Women climb aboard and tear off, embracing the wild exhilaration of acceleration.
driver's license and you're driving the car. You know, remember like the year before you even got your driver's license, you'd sit in your mom's car and you'd act like it's yours and you'd walk around with the keys and you know what I mean? Like you'd do all those things because you couldn't wait till that day that you got to take it out. And remember getting on that freeway for the first time and you seriously didn't know if you were gonna wet yourself right there. And the bike is the same thing. It's just that you happen to be that much freer.
Our garage was just always filled with bikes, and I always thought that everyone else had bikes in their garage, and they always had to do a ballet around the bikes to get through the garage. My mom used to ride me to preschool on her motorcycle. She has a '69 Sportster. Just literally got born into a really cool lifestyle.
It's interesting when people find out that I ride a motorcycle, most people are like, oh, you have a Harley? I'm like, no. Or they think I have like a smaller bike. A lot of people are surprised to find out, like when I tell them the size of my engine, you know, they're like, oh, an 1100. Which I mean, it's just the bike that I happen to like. It wasn't like I needed that much power. Truthfully, I don't really feel like I confront a lot of stereotypes around it.
The first and probably the biggest one is that we're all lesbians. And I could see where that would probably potentially have been true moons ago, just because I think that a lot of my lesbian friends were riding long before a lot of heterosexual females were, because we were still on the back of our guys' bikes.
A lot of people think that because you're this wild biker that you somehow swing from the ceilings and have wild sex all night, which, okay, sometimes I do.
Second, I would say that we're all 300 pounds, and we're not. And then I would say that the third biggest one, and maybe they're all tied, is that we don't want men around us, or that we somehow are riding to the exclusion of men versus the inclusion of men, when that's so not true for me. Actually, it's my only way of meeting men to date anymore, is to just get out there and be riding with the guys.
I remember when I first started riding, it was very important to me to have long hair so that people knew that I was a woman on a bike. Because with all that motorcycle gear and the helmet and everything, unless you have a ponytail sticking out the back, there's not a whole lot to, and even then it could be a guy, but there's not a whole lot to say you're a woman. Because especially when I started riding, I don't even think they were making women's size and women's design motorcycle gear. So I was wearing men's stuff. So I looked like a guy on a bike. But if I had my ponytail sticking out the back, you know, I was a woman on a bike and I knew it. And I wanted everybody else to know it.
I'm just a woman that happens to ride. I'm just a rider. When I was on Mount Everest, it was just, I was the only girl. So you're that woman doing that thing. You're never just that person. And I really don't like to be separated because of my sex and because of my size or because of anything.
The key as a woman rider is to make sure you've been on many different motorcycles and find the match for you that works best. I've had a Suzuki Cruiser, I've had Harley Cruisers, I've had Ducati Monster, and that was an amazing bike, a sports bike. And then I've had 2 BMWs, F650 GSs. And after experiencing all those different variety of bikes, I realized that this is one that matches my personality best.
So my most recent bike, her name is Dirty Birdie, and she doesn't like to be washed, so she doesn't get washed. I bought her in 2010, and it's a Dyna. The Dyna fit my body, and I knew I liked it. There was a lot of planning that went into this bike because they're very expensive, and I know I'm gonna have it for a long time. She's got the body and the frame of everything that I wanted, and I know that she'll last me a really long time. And she does perform perfectly for me. She's got a great engine and nice size, and she's matte black. I specifically had everything matte black because I couldn't decide. It's almost like hair, is that she was gonna tell me her story, and now I have her story. Now I have to find the pieces that will eventually become her over time. But right now she was just a canvas, and she's dirty. very dirty. In fact, a guy pulled up alongside of me last week and he was like, "Oh, you ride a lot." And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Your bike's really dirty, and there's a lot of people that want really polished, clean bikes." And I said, "That's how I like it." And he kind of looked at me and rode off, and I was like, "Okay, bye."
My dad's best friend, Bill, taught me how to ride, and I rode around on a little dirt bike. But before that, I was riding around on a three-wheeled motorcycle. It's called a Servi car. So it was a 1950 Harley-Davidson Servi car. It would only go about 45 miles an hour, so I couldn't keep up with everyone. We couldn't go on certain runs, so I was like, all right, I think it's time to get on two wheels. My first ride was up in Sturgis. My bike was disco party purple with bright yellow, like hot pink, and then we had a gas tank issue on it, so we had to put a different gas tank on it, and that was a red and white gas tank. So it looked like a hot mess, but I had so much fun riding around, and it felt exhilarating being by myself, you know, and being a big girl and having a big girl's bike, and knowing that it was mine too, you know, not someone else's.
Well, the first bike I had was a Suzuki GS 500. I mean, I really liked it. It was a great entry-level bike, but I just felt like a truck would drive by and I'd be all over the place. And one day we pulled over on the side of the road and a semi drove past us and my bike tipped over from the wind gust after the semi, and I thought, okay, I gotta try something different. So when I test rode that BMW, I just felt so solid on it. And it was a bigger bike for sure. I struggled with it initially, especially at slower speeds. But for long distances, which is what I primarily ride, it's just such a great ride.
Well, I think your very best ride can also be your worst ride. And it's, to me, life is just about the stories. So we always kind of have this running line within the group of, well, it's going to be a good story. So even if everything breaks down and goes wrong, you have a good story.
There's nothing I love more than traveling, and every place in the world that I've ever been, I want to go again, and every place that I haven't been is someplace I need to see, and I want to be everywhere. I want to see everything. I want to meet everybody. There's nothing I don't want to try while I'm here on this planet.
When you go around the world for a year, you can only be in places for like 2 weeks at a time. So we started out being 2 weeks in Morocco, 2 weeks in Spain, 2 weeks in Portugal, and we were on this pace like this. And it was crazy, and we 6 months into it, we'd done all of Western Europe, all of Scandinavia, had done a lot of Eastern Europe, came back down through Greece and Turkey, caught a ferry boat to Israel. We got to Israel, and we were done. We were like, I'm done. If this is what traveling is, I'm just gonna go home now because I'm exhausted. I don't want to see another temple. I don't want to see another mosque, another museum, another famous bridge. I'm tired. We were doing, 600-mile days, and it was just sort of exhausting. And what we finally realized after getting some good rest is that for us, what was important is not all these, famous museums and sites you're gonna see, it's the people. And once that clicked in our head and we decided, what do we have to rush home for anyway? Why are we limiting ourselves to a year? I mean, we've got money in the bank. We sold our apartment in New York City. We quit our jobs. We didn't have to go back for anything. And so we said, well, let's just play it by ear. Let's just go until the money runs out or until we really are done traveling. And that just transformed everything. So our 1 year quick around the world trip turned into 4.5 years. It did not start as a 4.5 year trip. And we knew nothing about Guinness World Records or anything until we were done with our travels and someone mentioned to us, oh, you broke a record. So our record is 101,000 miles, 50 countries, 6 continents. So the only continent we didn't do was Antarctica. That's basically the record. Like I said, there are other people out there that I know that are traveling right now that have passed it, but they're still traveling, so they haven't officially beat it yet.
The
Continental Divide ride is a famous ride starting from Montana and going all the way down to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we average about 250 to 300 miles a day off-road. 2 years ago, I joined this group. When I arrived in Steamboat, none of the men were there. And I got concerned because I was at the hotel waiting for all the guys. Sure enough, they showed up 3 hours later and 2 guys crashed, and one broke their leg, one broke their ribs. And so of course I'm very intimidated. It's just me and 16 other men. We woke up the next morning and we are off, and here I am riding and everyone's staring at me saying there's no way this woman is going to clear these trails, this single track going through this sand. I was the only person who didn't drop their bike on the whole trip, and it was one of the most exhilarating experiences I've ever had in my entire life. The feeling of empowerment that these people did not believe I can do this with them and keep up with them, and sure enough I did.
We tried to ride 50 passes in 3 days in Colorado, which, by the way, is very difficult to do. I was feeling really, really good on the bike. So I was having a ton of fun riding with the guys. It was just one of those days where we didn't have any traffic and we were just all riding really smooth and really fast, and we had great weather, and just one of those days where I was, you know, you kind of have that moment where you're like, I'm really good at this. I can keep up with these boys. And I don't feel like I'm gonna crash every moment.
Days sometimes are the most interesting. We were in Malaysia and we were in the Highlands, and we were within a week going to ship our bikes to Australia. So we're on a 2-lane road and I'm behind a truck. I go to pass and the truck decides he's going to make a turn as I'm passing him. And I see the nose of the truck dive, which means he's putting on his brakes. So I try to throttle on just a little bit faster to get around him, but he doesn't look. He's not looking in his rearview mirror. And he actually sees cars coming, so he wants to make this turn. And so he clips the back of my panniers. And all of a sudden I have that weightless feel, where you're not grounded anymore, you're not on the ground. And you think, oh no, this is not gonna be good. And so he kind of flips me this way, and I high side, and I hit the ground. Oh, and on top of all that, right then and there, they had started to do road construction where they actually, you know how they scrape the pavement off and they create that grooves, which every motorcycle loves that. Motorcyclists love that, the feeling of going like this. Well, right as I'm passing, I'm doing this, I'm hitting this groove pavement. So I hit this, and I hit face first. I hit face down. I'm in very good Aero Stitch, Kevlar, good padding and everything. But I hit face down, and I slide, and my motorcycle's sliding behind me. I must have passed out for a bit of it, because the next thing I know, I'm laying on my back, sort of perpendicular in the road. I look to the right, and I see the grill of a car just there. And then my husband is over me yelling at me, you know, are you okay, are you okay? And I was in front, so he watched the whole thing. So my panniers exploded. So the impact on the one side, and then when it hit the other side, both panniers, the tops popped open and everything went flying. So everything I was carrying was just scattered everywhere. It looked like a fire sale. The truck stopped. The truck obviously knew it hit me, and it stopped. My husband, when he was watching this whole thing, he was in so much shock that he didn't think to stop right away, and he hit the truck. He actually, at the end of the day, he had more damage to his motorcycle than I did to mine, believe it or not. No broken bones, lots of scars where the Kevlar burned. Didn't rip, but it melts at that kind of friction speed. So and also I had sort of these lightweight motocross gloves on with just a little plastic here. And so I was dragging my knuckles as I was going face first. So I've got little scars across all my knuckles where that was all bloody. But really, that was about it. The next thing you know, a week later, I'm back on my bike, riding it in Kuala Lumpur traffic to the port, getting on a boat. And so yeah, that day was not a good day. It's the worst accident I've ever had.
It's in those moments where you're challenged, you can turn around if you want to, but then you've given up on the idea of the whole weekend. And that's what I think we get more excited about than anything, is the idea of the weekend or the ride or whatever we're doing. Half of the time, it never measures up to what we have in our head, but it's like, oh, I can't wait to get away. I can't wait to go do this. And I swear to God, 90% of the time, it can really suck it because the weather is way too hot, or it's too cold, or it's raining, or it's snowing, or it's something. but you persevere and you go through, and then you have a beer on the other side and turn around and you come back. And you do it all over again, you know? I don't know why. Like the ducks, you fly south and then you turn around, come back and do it again. It's, you know, that's how we ride.
Riding a motorcycle, there's just something inside of you, it lights up.
I get a little rise out of the fact that I know I'm probably breaking a few little laws while I'm riding and what I'm doing. There's a little bit of a high out of it. I don't do drugs, so it's my kind of drug.
It really is too much fun to leave to the guys alone.
It's just a rush. I absolutely love it. My dad said it best, it's the most fun you can have with your clothes on.